Welcome to the world of Rex. It's Marvel Rex here, and I am so delighted to be with each and every one of you on the podcast, on YouTube's, on the social medias. We are going to be talking about the weekly energies from a largely astrological perspective for the week of July 14th to July 20th of 2025. Before we dive in, you can always check out the links in the show notes to work with me one-on-one, get a reading, book a reading. I love working one-on-one with folks and going deep into their chart. You can also Venmo me a cup of coffee to say thank you for the podcast and slash the YouTubes. You can always subscribe to the newsletter, share the newsletter with people. There's bonus content there. There's sales on readings. Just keep your eyes on that newsletter, people. It's amazing. All right. I am so excited to dive in to what this week has in store. Before we do, let's start with some big picture stuff going on. All right. So, big picture. I want to talk more about the North and South Node in Virgo and Pisces because this week is certainly toned by this larger cycle that we're in. So the nodes of the moon and other planets have nodes as well, if you want to be a geek about it and go do some deep dives on all the other planets' nodes. But the most important nodes that we focus on are those of the moon. Why? Because, well, the moon rules our emotional body, our ability to feel things in the body somatically and process them. The nodes of the moon have everything to do with eclipses. They are technically not planetary bodies, but they are mathematical points that are along what's called an ecliptic, which is essentially a mathematical line that delineates the dance between the sun, moon, and the earth. TLDR, we're not going to get too much into the astronomical geekiness of this, but essentially, when the nodes are activated, we are emotionally realigned. We are psychically and karmically realigned. They're a little bit like the bumpers in the bowling lane. That's how I like to think about the North and South Node. They function on an axis. They are always at the same degree, just in different signs. All right. They also move counterclockwise through the zodiac, which is so confusing to people, but they do move backwards. Now, there's a lot of lore around the North and South Node. The North Node is considered to be the head of the dragon from a Vedic or Indian astrological perspective. The South Node is the tail of the dragon. When you think of the North Node, you think of the top, right? It has a lot to do with the thing that we are hungering towards. Whereas the South Node or the bottom of the dragon, the dragon's tail, is about releasing karma. We are supposed to be sort of integrating the South Node themes of our lives, but in a way that is not dominant. The North Node tends to be more dominant in a person's lifetime. The South Node can be, but if we are leaning on the South Node, we tend to be regressive. So I'll discuss that more in a second. But essentially, we are aiming towards the North Node in this lifetime, usually through the tools of the South Node. So it's not that we're discarding the South Node entirely or its energies. We actually need it to reach the head of the dragon. We start climbing from the base all the way up, but it is not what we are leaning on or moving towards in this lifetime. We are moving towards our North Node. Now, everyone has a different nodal placement. You share the same nodal placement as people born right around the same year and a half as you. Again, really depends person to person because sometimes, you're both born in 1992, but if the nodes moved at some point in 1992, there could be a different nodal placement, right? But essentially, especially if you share a birthday with somebody in the same year, you're going to have the same nodal placement. The nodes signify, again, where we are headed in this lifetime versus what we are releasing from a very karmic and dharmic perspective. It has a lot to do with very spiritual themes in our life, emotional themes in our life, again, associated with the moon. Right now, we are living inside of the portal of Pisces and Virgo with the nodal placement. So we have the North Node in Pisces, which is us being hungry for spirituality, music, art, film, romance, universalized emotional experience, because Pisces is the final water sign of the zodiac. So there is an element of really encapsulating an emotional zeitgeist or an emotional tone that is more universal, trying to understand what humanity is emotionally processing at this time, there is associations with death, grieving, and dying when it comes to Pisces. There's also a genuine theme around surrender and what can I not control? What do I have to have faith in? Capital FAITH. Like that is the big North Node in Pisces word. What do I need to have faith in? The North Node here is this hungry dragon that comes in and says, over the next year and a half, well, technically, really through 2026, the North Node in Pisces says, I need you to focus on what brings you faith, flow state, spiritual nourishment, emotional nourishment, and keeps you tapped into the emotional zeitgeist of collective humanity, even the hard parts. So Pisces encapsulates a lot of it encapsulates the first 11 signs. So there's an element of us really paying attention emotionally, psychically, and spiritually to what is happening to everybody in the world, being sensitive to it. The reason that Pisces is often associated with addiction is because Pisces people, sun, moon, and rising, if you know any of them, or people who have very sensitive Pisces points in their planets in their chart, tend to have issues with addiction and self-undoing because they are so sensitive and they are literally carrying the emotional burden of the first 11 archetypes or signs of the zodiac. So anyone who has sensitive degrees or points or placements or even their nodes in Pisces Virgo is sensitive to the collective emotional experience in a very deep way, often one that can make them want to disappear, Pisces. So the shadow of the North Node here is people being like, I'm going to go back into my comfort zone. Now, luckily, Saturn and Neptune are in Aries right now, and that's a huge wake-up call that's active. So I don't think it's going to be easy to go back to sleep. I think that if we are engaging in the shadow of Pisces with the North Node there, in terms of being a victim, hiding from reality, delusions, lies, any kind of mental health stuff that is overwhelming, that's not going to really last because of all the Aries energy, as well as just all of really the air and fire that's elementally in the sky right now, including Uranus and Gemini, including Pluto and Aquarius. There's just so much externalized energy. I think it's going to be very hard for people to effectively hide from themselves and from society. Now, there's many ways to interpret that. It's kind of an intense time to be alive. I think it's an extremely intense time to be alive and incarnate. The work here on a more efficient level, in my opinion, is to understand what we can control as individuals in our lives and what we cannot control, getting very clear on that over the next year and a half as we move towards our own selfish goals. Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, even Chiron being there. This selfish path that we are taking must be spiritualized. That is what the North Node in Pisces is asking. What do I mean by must be spiritualized? It has to be connected to the rest of the universe. It has to be connected to the emotional zeitgeist. It has to be connected to larger movements. Again, I'm kind of a broken record here, but the Aries piece will not work unless we are being a cosmic citizen within our communities. That means that we are becoming more deeply a friend to other humans in general, including cultures that you don't understand. North Node in Pisces has significations around immigration, emigration, and people from far off lands from you. The North Node here is a desire. So a desire to understand what's happening globally with immigration, with borders. I mean, this is going to be a huge thing over the next year and a half. The South Node in Virgo is what we are releasing right now collectively. This is affecting everybody. The South Node in Virgo is about releasing perfection or an idea around perfection. The funny thing about Virgo placements, and I have a Virgo placement that's very strong in my chart, so I'm speaking as a Virgo person here. The funny thing about Virgo is that Virgo has an idea about perfection. It is not actually perfection. It is an idea. It can manifest as OCD. It can manifest as hypochondria. That's the irony of Virgo, is that it really feels on a very more cerebral level that it has an idea around what perfection and purity is. It's not always reality. It's just the idea that the Virgo is having. Now, the South Node here comes in and basically kind of vacuums, is like a roto-rooter, starts to come in and suck away all of these preconceived notions of what purity and perfectionism is. starts to remove thought patterns that no longer serve us. I talked about this last week, I believe. The South Node touching Mars, which Mars is in Virgo right now as I'm looking at this chart for the 14th of July. The South Node touching Mars, Mars is a surgeon. So Mars here with the South Node is like, we're going to cut some shit out that's really getting in our way and our ability to function. Anyone who has OCD or intrusive thoughts knows how much energy it takes to even hold all of that. And it can really get in a person's way day to day. The South Node in Mars here is an excellent time to start to actively, Mars active, actively remove thought patterns, replace them with mantras, spiritual mantras, North Node in Pisces, to rewrite the narrative of our story. This is a beautiful time for narrative therapy. I love narrative therapy. It's really helped me a lot. What is the story I'm telling about my life and other people in it? Where can I really be honest about where I don't have control over that piece and I have to surrender it? Pisces, I have to surrender. I have to have faith. I was just reading something about couples work where it's talking about, have you had an ego death in a relationship? The ways that you know you haven't is that you're always trying to be right in conflict. So anytime there's a conflict that arises, you're like, I have to be right. I have to be right. Or my version of whatever's right has to be dominant. That is the shadow of Virgo, the shadow of the South Node in Virgo, particularly, which is, oh, I somehow have this all figured out and you're not doing it correctly. That's why Virgo can be associated with nagging and nagging people to be more perfect. Now, the beautiful side of Virgo, which the South Node will also illuminate, is what are things that we're doing with our health and routines and mental health that need to go. So for some people, it's eating sugar, drinking alcohol. A lot of people are going to be woken up right now where they're like, oh, I have to, they're going to be waking up where they say, oh, I have to remove this health block, this diet block, this thing that is causing so much of an energy drain. The South Node is beautiful for that. It's about releasing health habits and diet habits that don't serve. So there's something, and Mars here is energy for that. So it's really a beautiful time to be doing this work. Let me just say one more thing about the axis of Pisces and Virgo. This is an axis that I really associate with the word suffering. It's an axis that I associate with martyrs, people who are putting themselves up and can really experience a lot of pain and suffering for others. There's associations with, I think of, Jesus here with the Pisces piece, thinking of the fish and him being a fisherman and the whole, that really strong archetype. There's a very much a Jesus-like quality to Pisces. And even Virgo, I think of Joan of Arc. I think of these people who are like, I am going to, sacrifice and be of service because I want something more pure. I want something more perfect. These are themes that are going to come up. And so the big question existentially for each and every one of us as individuals is, what is the tightrope? The axis, the North Node and South Node is kind of like a tightrope. You're walking on a rope and you could fall on either side. It's like you got to be really careful when you're walking around on the nodes. But the tightrope question is, how much of my life is in my control? How much do I have to surrender to? How can I get really clear about what that delineation is and focus more on the Pisces? So you want to lean more towards Pisces, which is spiritual infrastructure, yoga, healing therapies, all of even the woo-woo stuff, listening to this podcast. This is all Pisces stuff, which is I have a system that helps me understand how to let go, especially the things I don't control. Astrology is so interesting because it's very much a Virgo art. It's about trying to control and understand the minutia of the cosmic rhythms. The beauty, I think, of a very well-trained astrologer, including myself, is that I can fixate all day on all the aspects week to week, but the work here in a very beautiful way is to know all the aspects, Virgo, and then let go and have the experience archetypally and not overthink it. But take note later. Like I'm always like, okay, I'm going to just go into this transit and see what happens. And I'm not going to hyper control because that's crazy. Like, by crazy, I just mean life is not about just trying to control everything. We don't enjoy life if we sit in the shadow of Virgo. And I know a lot of Virgos who the work I do with them one-on-one is to enjoy life more because their mind is constantly getting in the way. in terms of trying to perfect moment to moment what is happening. So getting really clear on like, this is what I can control. This is what I can't control. And it's going to be shifting throughout the year. That's part of the eclipses that are happening is our routines are going to get really disrupted. And this is an amazing opportunity to focus more on surrender, faith, spirituality, and healing. You know, the North Node in Pisces is about healing on a deeply emotional level, on the mental health plane, as it relates to the physical health of the body. They are always tied. A great book to read if you need a book recommendation for this transit for the next year is The Body Keeps Score. That's one of the most beautiful Virgo books I've ever read. The Body Keeps Score. It talks about how mental health and physical health are essentially the same thing. And physical symptoms that we're having have a lot to do with trauma that we have on a psychological level. So we're really processing that this year and this week. So we're going to dive into July 14th here. Monday, we have the moon in Pisces exactly opposite Mars. All right. About midday PST, very close to the north and south node. So Mars is in Virgo. I said this last week, cleaning up a lot of health and diet and daily routine issues. So Mars is coming in, bulldozing in Virgo, saying, hey, this is that we got to cut this out. You really want to think about Mars as a knife. It's just like, we got to cut this out. There can be inflammation in our bodies that comes up to the surface at this time to be addressed. So Mars does cause inflammation in a very fundamental way. Inflammation of the mind in a Mercury ruled sign like Virgo. There can be inflammation of the mind, inflammation of thoughts, but also inflammation of the body. Virgo is the health, sort of the health sign of the zodiac. If inflammation comes up for you right on Monday, because the moon is in Pisces, like right across from it, contacting this. So we're all going to be thinking and feeling about this. If you are experiencing inflammation or health issues, or even just mental health issues with the moon in Pisces, you want to slow down on this day and you want to start doing some, I would say the first thing is like to really write some stuff down. And I use the word writing very specifically because when I think of Mercury ruled signs, Mars here, one of the ways to get really conscious is to start writing a list. Like, this is what's happening for me. This, just seeing it. Okay, this is what's going on. Mercury is in, speaking of the ruler of Virgo, Mercury's in Leo, which always indicates to me that there's potentially some childhood wounding that's coming up for people at this time. There can be feeling of like, I want to express myself more. And so if you're having issues around expression, expressing your passions very specifically, if you're having blocks around feeling joy in your life, this is a very powerful moment right on Monday to start to write things down, be in dialogue with your inner child, think about your childhood and how it's potentially impacting your body right now. The moon in Pisces has such a significant, effect on mental health. So it is definitely, Monday is a day to be going slower, resting, letting yourself sleep, letting yourself dream, writing down your dreams in a dream journal as hints and clues as to what you need to let go from the Mars storyline in Virgo, with the South Node there saying release, release, release. What thoughts are no longer serving you? These are some good questions. What can you let go of that you're like, I can't control that? You might want to write a list down of like things you could really just cut a piece of paper in half and say, what can I control in my life? Start to write the list down. What can I not control? Read it. If you have a therapist, show your therapist. Like, this is a great time to get feedback as well. Like, what do you think about this list? And having somebody else, potentially an expert, be like, yeah, well, actually, that thing you wrote on that side, you do have control, or you don't have control over this thing. So clarifying. Virgo is about clarifying and organizing. So great time to do that. There definitely can be, if there is any mental health stuff happening, it's going to be really pronounced on Monday, even Tuesday. So we head into Tuesday. The moon is still in Cancer. We just came off of a full moon in Capricorn here last week. So we're processing a lot of stuff when it comes to our really early childhood stuff with the patriarch and the matriarch in our life. So I always say this about Cancer and Capricorn season. We're currently deeply in Cancer season with the sun there. You want to really be ruminating and contemplating your relationship to the patriarchs of your childhood and the matriarchs, because all of this stuff I was talking about with Virgo Pisces is very deeply informed by the first 14 years of your life. the first 14 years of your existence, like, how did you feel safe? What is your threshold of tolerance based on how you were raised? Some people have a lower threshold of tolerance because they were raised in a really abusive situation. So it's not about judging that. It's not about necessarily feeling, we don't need to be feeling masochistic about any of this work, this spiritual work, but it's about being like, oh, okay, I'm going to look at this. Capricorn's very practical. So it's like, I'm going to look at this practically, but then feel the emotions that come up. Cancer sun. This is Cancer season. It's the time to be emo. It's a time to be crabby. It's a time to be angry about things that happened. The shadow of Cancer, and I see this with a lot of Cancer risings, is holding on to resentment and being plagued by resentment by not expressing the emotional truth that they're having because they want to find some level of security and comfort, especially if they didn't have it in childhood. So the moon here, especially in Pisces, Monday, Tuesday, trining the sun in Cancer is feel your feelings, be more internalized, but also honor and forgive what is coming up for you. Forgive the matriarch and the patriarch. That's a big part of this cycle right now with the North Node in Pisces, is forgiving them. And Saturn and Neptune in Aries in general right now are about reclaiming our individual path, literally person by person. So you listening to this podcast, I'm talking directly to you as a singular being right now. The work is very emotional in this moment as I'm looking at this week. It's not by any stretch of the imagination anything we can't handle, but it's emotional precisely to clarify your path in your hero's journey with the Aries storyline, to clarify, oh, this is why I'm doing all of this. I'm doing all of this deep healing during Cancer season. I'm forgiving my mother. I'm forgiving my father. I'm forgiving the patriarchs and matriarchs in my life in order to clarify my own directional path as an individual so that I can be way more responsible for myself, way more accountable as a singular being. Therefore, people are going to trust me more because I'm way more accountable and I'm doing the hard work. I'm doing the healing journey. So it's super powerful. Really great time to be talking about childhood with the sun in Cancer and Mercury in Leo. And I would just say, on a very light note, with the Mercury in Leo, you want to find the fun. You want to find underneath all the feelings, where is their passion, joy, expression, art? I really fundamentally believe that each and every one of us is an artist in some way, shape, or form. And with Mercury in Leo about to retrograde, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in Leo soon. This is a beautiful time to start thinking about what really brings me joy. Where is my spark? Where do I feel really freaking excited and artistic? In whatever way that is for you. It could be movement practices, dance, singing, martial arts. It's anywhere where you get to kind of be like a peacock, a male peacock. Like anybody can peacock. I'm an actor, so I have a very strong Leo in my chart. It's where I get to go and shine and be like, yeah, what's up? This is what I do. I'm expressing myself. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we all have that. We all have Leo in our chart somewhere. So we all really have that. And this moment is a great moment with Mercury there, with the sun in Cancer, with all of this Virgo Pisces energy to really start to clarify, what do I need to feel through in terms of grief and forgiveness? What do I need to let go of, Virgo, that's really getting in the way so that I can actually experience joy? So that we've got that Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday shifts, or by Wednesday, actually, we get a pretty big shift because the moon enters Aries and it's going to cross over Saturn and Neptune. So you want to pay attention pretty much all day Wednesday, the 16th. Adjust for your time zone. I'm really functioning from a PST time zone right now. You want to focus on Wednesday, July 16th, around what your purpose is. The moon is in Aries. It's a very selfish moon transit. Wednesday, Thursday, getting really clear on, okay, what steps and action do I need to take? You may also be, because because Saturn and Neptune are both retrograde, we could be having to go back on certain projects that we just started in June, July, really June, on what we started on in June. Actually, far back as March 30th. So April, May, June, you can be going back on projects, but they should be projects or, ventures that are self-focused and self-oriented to some degree. There needs to be something where you're taking personal accountability and saying, I am doing this. I am initiating this. So for some people, it's entrepreneurial endeavors. For some people, it's being like, I'm stepping up as a leader, particularly if you are an Aries sun, moon, or rising. I'm stepping up as a leader to really spearhead this project or this movement. And right now, there's with the moon here, Wednesday, Thursday, we are clarifying what that brave new world is, what that brave new path is. I would recommend with Moon and Aries, take time to be by yourself Wednesday, Thursday. Take a break from other people because the shadow here with Mercury, with I keep wanting to Mercury's like really, I keep wanting to say Mercury with the moon in Aries. The shadow is I'm not giving myself time, and then I'm going to explode on somebody. You know, it can be very temperamental, the moon in Aries. It can be very hot and angry. It's very quick to forgive, but the anger can be explosive if we're not positioning ourselves first, at least for this lunar transit. So again, Wednesday, Thursday, make sure you're taking care of your ish specifically before you try to. It's the idea of like um put on the gas mask in the air. What is it? The oxygen mask. Put on your oxygen mask before helping other people. That's exactly this transit. Make sure you're putting on your oxygen mask Wednesday, Thursday before you're interacting with anybody else. So there's that. Overall, it's kind of a nice week in the sense that we do have some shifts relationally. I'm looking at it hasn't perfected yet, but we're going to get a Venus Mars square. It's coming in, I believe, next week, but we're already gearing up. So Venus is trying to catch up to Mars right now. The divine feminine is trying to catch up to the divine masculine. The closer we get to the end of the week, so I'm looking at Thursday, but even Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there is a relational, by that I mean like one-to-one person experience, you and another. There's a relational shift happening right now this week and next week. There is tension here. It's Gemini to Virgo tension. So the tension with Venus in Gemini and Mars in Virgo is, oh, I have to communicate differently. I have to communicate differently in relationships so that we can be closer, so that there can actually be movement in this dynamic. A lot around our thoughts, a lot around how we're thinking. We have to go back to the top of this episode and really just listen to that South Node in Virgo, because the South Node in Virgo is, oh, my desire to always control or to always be right is getting in the way of me having happiness in my relationships. Venus in Gemini says, please try something different when it comes to how you communicate, particularly if you're having dynamics with people where you feel disempowered when you leave the dynamic, where you tried so hard to be right, or you were like trying so hard to get somebody to see your position and it didn't work. And then you leave and you're like, God, I feel worse than I did before I talked to that person. That is a huge indicator that there's South Node Virgo work to do. Venus Gemini says, try something different. She's a trisexual. She's like, try something different. Uranus is there doubling down on that storyline. Uranus and Gemini is like, please communicate differently. Okay. This will be particularly profound for the Geminis and Virgos in your life. So if you know them, know that they're really trying to figure out some relational stuff. This can also be creative projects to a degree. There's something really fertile about this upcoming square that's going to perfect next week if we are willing to be very flexible and try new things. That's really the homework. So there we go. Yeah, very faded relational stuff this week. Very faded relational stuff, particularly for the cardinal signs. So that's Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius. It's just really major. We get a tone shift on the weekend. Friday, we have the moon moving into Taurus, where she is in much better condition than when she is in Aries. She will trine the South Node in Mars. I like this. I just really like this Taurus moon. There is going to be she's going to make a square to Pluto and a square to Mercury, but overall, I think this is really just processing more emotional stuff, but around what do I need to feel safe in a relationship. The moon moves into Taurus, where again, we're focusing on safety and security in relationships, as well as feeling grounded and like we can trust our partners, right as Mercury stations retrograde. So on Friday, July 18th, mark your calendars, please, especially if you are a Virgo or a Gemini. This is just a really big week for you. but also if Mercury is your time lord or if you are a Leo, because Mercury stations retrograde in Leo at 15 degrees, which is a world point. The news this week is going to be freaking huge. I'm recording this like 2 months in advance. The news, oh my God, the news this week is so important. And let me say this, whatever comes up in the news cycle this week looks looks bananas to me. Looks bonkers bananas. Whatever we think, whatever the first story is not the full story. Okay? So just know that whatever's happening on a cultural, societal level, news-wise, the news cycle is going to be real funky and not correct initially, but big. So a world point is basically a very sensitive collective point where whatever's happening, especially when Mercury stations on a world point, Mercury rules the news. He literally rules journalists. The news is going to be huge, but it's not going to be 100% correct when it first comes out. The retrograde is going to clarify what the actual story is, but it's going to be a big collective thing. This is going to be a global news story. Mark my words. With Leo, look, it depends on the Leo countries. I don't have any of those off the top of my head. Those could be very spotlit. But I would say with Leo, there's going to be questions around children. Leo rules children. Leo rules artists. We'll see a lot around Hollywood because Leo rules actors. Trump and JD Vance are both Leo risings, so probably a Trump thing. I hate to say it. Yeah, it's going to be really, really big. He's also a Gemini, and Geminis are just really up this week. So I just think this is going to be a huge news cycle week, especially when it comes to the government in the US, because the president and vice president are both Leo risings. We have Mercury stationing in their sign. When Mercury stations retrograde in Leo, we are all being asked to go back to the drawing board in terms of what our creative endeavors are, what our passion projects are, what our ability to feel joy is, and whether we need to really change some shit up so that we can feel more joy. You know, I consider myself to be a very spiritual person. Spirituality is extremely important to me. It, guides my morals and ethics. I really function from a place of always wanting to get better. And by better, I mean more spiritual, more aligned, more efficient, and more loving. That is my goal. That's part of my spiritual practice. Mercury stationing in Leo is going to ask each and every one of us to really inspect the blind spots that we have when it comes to feeling more aligned in our lives. And this is the point I was going to get to. We got to go back. My brain. As much of a spiritual person as I am, there are moments where I'm like, oh, I'm getting too caught in the Virgo weeds of my life. Like I'm not actually slowing down enough to experience joy. I'm in the grind. I'm trying to make my life perfect. I'm trying to make my spiritual practice perfect. My workout and diet and health. I've got Jupiter in Virgo. So I'm always like, let's make it better. Let's make it better. Like I can get really caught in the weeds. The work this week when Mercury stations retrograde in Leo is get out of the weeds and find joy, have a good time, like find love. So we really want to be thinking about our heart chakra. A big existential question when Mercury stations in Leo is, what does your heart want? What does your heart really want? And I've said this on the podcast before, but if you hear that question from me right now and you're like, I don't know, or I feel confused about that, or that triggers me, then the deeper work is the North Node in Pisces, which is, okay, I have to start a healing journey because I'm not sure what my passion is. And I am going to be a little bit of a Capricorn right now and just say that 2025 and 2026, as the 24 months that they are, this is a behemoth of like a process of change. Like this is just like such words are failing me. Mercury retrograde. There's such a process of incredible transformation happening over these 24 months that we actually have to really clarify our position as an individual and what brings us joy and what our creative projects are. If you are an artist and you're deep in this work already, you're going to be clarifying what creative projects you're trying to do. You're going to be editing them. You're going to be going back to the drawing board. This is a slow down moment. If you do not have Mercury retrograde in your chart, in your birth chart, which if you don't know, get a reading with me, I'll tell you, you need to slow way down. For people who have Mercury retrograde in their natal chart, this is a really great time to full steam ahead on your documents, contracts, creative projects. But for those who have Mercury direct in their birth chart, we are slowing down. We are getting in touch with our inner child, what brings us passion, what brings us joy, and we are clarifying it. And we're doing the Virgo work, which is like, what's getting in the way of me experiencing joy? What am I really hyperfixating on and trying to control? And I'm not enjoying my fucking life. Like that's a big part of this. Mercury stationing in Leo is like, you need to enjoy your life. You have one life. So yes, there's all this like hero's journey work with Aries. There's all this really exciting new paradigm coming in, but we can't be in the new exciting paradigm if we're doing stuff that's not fun all the time. It's like all work and no play makes Jack a sad boy or whatever. This is from The Shining. It's like you don't want The Shining. You want to feel like every day there are pockets of joy amidst the birthing process of Aries. It's an uncomfortable moment with Saturn and Neptune here. It's a really uncomfortable moment for the collective. This is birthing pains. This is labor. It's not fun. It's scary, but how radical is it to actively pursue joy and laughter and childlike wonder during these birthing pains? And that is Mercury retrograde in Leo. We have to go find our fun. We have to go find our joy. We have to recover our inner child. What does that little person need and want from you? That's a really big question here. That's the really big aspect of the week. It's going to be very intense. Why? Because Venus and Mars, the divine lovers, which rule our relationships in general, no matter who you are, they rule. Mars and Venus is like, how do I love and how do I express my love? How do I like assert my love? They are both ruled by Mercury. Okay, in this moment, because Mars is in Virgo, a Mercury ruled sign, and Venus is in Gemini, a Mercury ruled sign. Mercury stationed retrograde on Friday. So it's like, this is just magnifying how our relationships, the divine lovers, are mirroring for us the healing we have to do in our inner child work. The trap that I could see this week for a lot of people is that they get triggered in their relationships. They unconsciously start to channel Mars touching the South Node in Virgo, which is, I'm going to prove myself to be right. I'm going to try a bunch of mischievous ways, Venus and Gemini, to prove myself right. And I'm not actually going to hear what my inner child needs because I'm too caught in a bickering battle. That's the shadow. That is like the thing you don't want to do this week, is to get caught in the minutia of a dynamic and all the details in a way where you're not seeing the big picture, North Node in Pisces. You're not seeing where you're like the thing about the Mercury ruled signs, Virgo and Gemini, is that they really can go down a wormhole logistically that has nothing to do with the heart chakra, which is Leo. And the heart chakra goes, oh my God, I'm feeling abandoned right now. That's why I'm trying to prove myself right, because if I'm right, then maybe my partner won't leave me. Why don't you just tell your partner, I'm feeling abandoned right now? Or if it's not your partner, it's your parent, it's your sibling, it's, Gemini rules siblings. So it could be sibling storylines for a lot of people. It's anybody that you have to interface with that feels triggering to you. This stationing, especially I would say the second half of the week, Wednesday through Sunday, this Mercury station is asking us to get very deeply in touch with how we're actually feeling from a heart level. Does our heart hurt? Can we be vulnerable? Leo rules bravery, similar to Aries. Leo is the brave lion, the courageous lion. So not the cowardly lion. Although during the retrograde, we may feel cowardly. It's okay. Like, this is part of what retrogrades do. They show us, oh, wow, I actually get really avoidant, or I hide my heart from my partner. They can show us that. That's the medicine of a retrograde. So you want to do heart opening exercises, including sports and just getting your blood pumping. That's really good for Leo. But also like tapping, doing the emotional freedom technique, where you're tapping your heart, doing heart-based massage. So you can literally massage over your heart and start to wake it up. But it's as simple as saying to your, the people in your life, your one-on-one relationships, hey, I want to be really vulnerable with you right now. Do we have space for that? Can we create a container? And if you don't have that yet infrastructurally in your relationships, then I would recommend a third party being there to mediate. That's really powerful at this moment. And Venus in Gemini is a great position for the goddess of love to be very experimental with how she's communicating. So doing different things when it comes to being emotionally vulnerable from the heart chakra. If you can, I would avoid sending important emails, text messages, DMs, any kind of communication, snail mail, really Wednesday through Sunday. Okay. So that is essentially the week ahead. Good luck with that Mercury station. Find your fun, find your joy, let your inner lion roar. That is the homework this week. That is what's on the curriculum. If you need more help getting in touch with who you are and locating yourself, you can always work with me one-on-one. That is linked in the show notes. You can also check me out on YouTube and TikTok. I'm now on TikTok doing shirtless astrology all the time. It's at marvel.rex on TikTok. Speaking of the South Node in Virgo, which rules social media in my chart. Okay. Thank you for listening to The World of Rex. I love each and every one of you, and I will talk to you next week, as always, on, I'm going to say it one more time, The World of Rex.